So now that we've got filtering set up on our API, our next task is to go and set this up on the client, of course. So what we'll do, we'll head over to our activity store first of all, and what we're currently doing. Well, let's take a look. And we have an ability to send up query string parameters via the Axios params. That could come in useful. And what we want to do is take a predicate from the client so that when they click on one of those filter buttons, we update something inside our store that we can then react to. So what we'll do is we'll come up to our properties and we'll add a property for a predicate. And what we'll use for this, just to make it easy for us to manage, is a map. And what we'll do is we'll actually set an initial property, and that's going to be for all of our activities so that we can highlight on our filtering component which one is selected by default. So what we'll do, we'll chain on the set method and we'll set the all property to true. And then what we can do, we can come down to our Axios params and we're going to loop through the predicate and set any keys and values that have been set as query string parameters that we can also pass up with our Axios params. So inside here, after the page number and page size, we'll just go and check what's in our predicate and we'll loop over the keys inside there. So the predicate has a key and value pair. So what we can specify is value for the first parameter and key for the second parameter. And then inside here we can check to see if one of our keys is equal to the start date of when we want to filter by. As we'll need to send this up not as a JavaScript object, because it's going to be a query string parameter, we need to convert this into a string. So what we'll do is we'll have a key, and we will have a key for the start date. We're just doing the store side of things first in this case, and then we'll configure it on our activity filter. But what we'll do is we'll check to see if the key is the start date, and then we'll append a new param, and we'll say key, and then the value, and we want to say to ISO string. But we don't get any type safety or anything with this because it doesn't know what our value is supposed to be. So what we'll do, just so that we don't make any mistakes with this value, we'll say value as date. And then we get the date properties that we can use, and we want to convert this date to an ISO string so that it is genuinely a string that we send up. And if it's not the date, then it's going to be one of our normal filters. So what we'll do is say params.append, and then we'll say key comma value. So what we'll need to do is we're going to need to want a method to set the predicate as well. So what we'll do, we'll just add a method in here and call it set predicate. And this is going to take a predicate which is a string, and it's going to take a value which is also a string, or the value of course could be a date, because our filters are going to be, is it all activities, is it the host, is it is going, or is it the start date? So we'll provide two different options for the value, and what we want to do is add a switch statement. So we'll say switch, and we're going to switch based on the predicates that we receive in the parameter here. And inside the switch statement, in the case that it is all, then what do we actually want to do here? And if we took a look at our filtering options, and I'm not going to be able to take a look at them now because I've just broken the app. Nope, I can still look at them. So if we take a look at the filtering options, we're going to allow them to select one at a time of these filters, only one of them. They can either select all activities, or they can select I'm going, or they can select I'm hosting. But we want to retain the dates. So if they want to check I'm hosting, but we're in, let's say, April, then we want to keep this date, but update just the value for the filter. So that's the goal of what we're doing. And how do we want to manage this inside here? Well, because it's a switch, we want to turn, if we select all, we want to turn off the is host and is going. If it's is going, we want to turn off all and is host, that kind of thing. So what we'll do is we'll just add a little helper method inside our function here. So we'll actually add a new function and we'll say reset predicates. And what we'll do is we'll say list.predicates for each and we'll say value, comma, key, so we get access to the key, and we'll check to make sure that the key is not equal to the start date. And as long as it's not equal to the start date, then we'll say list.predicate delete and the key. And what this will mean is we can just use list method to switch off the other keys apart from the date. So what we can say is, in the case of all, we'll say reset predicate first of all. Then we'll say list.predicate.set, and we'll specify all and set it to true. And then we'll break. And if it's the case that we're looking at is going, then once again we'll reset predicate, and I've got a colon in a place where there shouldn't be a colon. And then we'll say list.predicate.set, and we'll set the is going, and we'll set this to true, and then we'll break. In the case that it is host, then once again we'll just reset the predicates, and we'll say list.predicate.set and is host, and set this to true, and we'll break. And in the case that is or start date, then we're going to say list.predicate.delete the start date. And we're deleting this key, by the way, because of the way that we're going to react to changes in the predicate. If we just set the value, then we're not going to trigger the change detection to update what we're going to do when the predicate changes. So then what we'll do, we'll say list.predicate.set, and we'll use the start date, and we'll set it to the value in this case. So as mentioned, we want to be able to react to the predicate when this changes. And when it changes, we're going to want to, of course, we'll be updating our Axios params, and we want to load the activities. So what we'll do, we'll come up to our constructor here, and this is a good time to use a reaction. Once again, we don't want to react to when the initial predicate is set, but anytime it changes, we want to react to that. So a good time to use a reaction once again. And what we'll do inside the parameter here is we'll add the expression saying list.predicate, and we want to observe the keys in this case. Are the keys going to change? And because of the way that we've set up the switch statement, then we can observe the key changes and do something if any of the keys inside there change. So what we'll do is we'll, in the second expression, we'll open up curly brackets and we'll say list.paging params equals new paging params. We're going to reset these because we're using filtering, and we've got no way to know if they had previously been looking at is host. Then we're going to have to start them again at page 1 with the new batch of activities. What we'll also do is clear the activity registry. So we'll use list.activity-registry.clear, and then we'll say list.load activities. And then the load activities, of course, is taking our Axios params, and we'll load the next batch of activities. So now that we have this in place, we'll be able to update our activity filters and use what we've been doing inside our store.